Hello everyone, welcome back to another Esports Racing Canada lap guide video. This one is for week 1 of the Formula 4 Community League. For week 1 we're going to Winton Motor Raceway. I think it's in Australia. So this combo, it was pretty fun. These curbs are massive here. So that's something I'll be talking about quite a bit. Just because they're tricky to kind of manage, and there's certain ones you can take and certain ones you can't take. So I was running 56 on the brake bias, and other than that, there's not much else you can do in terms of setup. But yeah, let's jump right into the hot lap. Alright, so now on to the lap guide. Heading into turn 1 here, we got this chicane. This is, I'd say, probably one of the trickier corners here, just because you got to have a lot of confidence in the car and being able to get the rotation out of it that you need. Braking just before the 50 board here. Coming into this corner, I found the best thing to do was to hit high peak pressure and drop it fairly quickly instead of holding like 50-60% for a longer period of time. So getting that high threshold braking in right as the downforce is at its maximum was good, and then trailing off as you turn in. This apex here, I found like just clipping it that much was enough. Any more and you kind of bottom out. And if you're over to the right a bit more, it's just it's slower because it's a wider line. So taking this shortest route was the fastest for this first part of the chicane. And then once you clip that flat out fairly quickly, and then for the next one, getting the car turned to the right as fast as possible. You can see I turned the wheel and then lift off the throttle, going over this red and white curbing here. And you want to be careful on exit here. Right here, there's a massive hole in the ground. If you hit that, you're going to go into the wall on the left there. So just being careful on exit here. You can afford to go over these rumble strips here, and any further to the left, it's just slower. So yeah, running out all the way wide there. Heading into this next corner, braking just before, once again, the 50 board, using this Marshall post kind of as a reference. And you can kind of see that there's a crest right before the apex of the corner. So another kind of tricky 90-degree right-hander right before the apex. You're going to get a bit of a loss of grip. So with that, you want to, again, hitting kind of peak pressure and trailing fairly quickly. And then right as I go over that crest, you can see right there, I drop the brakes just to get the rear settled a bit. And then just being careful I don't hit this curb here because it just is going to shoot me wide. In this car and this corner specifically, you can afford to go kind of straight to 100% without getting any wheel spin or much understeer. So running all the way out wide, you can see all the way as close to the dirt as possible. This next one, fairly simple. Turn in, lift, getting your right hand side wheels into the dirt pretty much. You can cut this curb without it giving you a 1x or a slowdown, so why not take that extra track. One thing you got to be careful about here is not taking too much speed or getting back on power too early, just because the exit kind of tightens up and the curb is smaller than the apex curb. Maybe it's the same size, but that dirt creeps up on you fairly quickly, so if you go off the edge, there's also a bit of a drop, so you got to be careful. This next corner is a long left-hander, no brakes required, kind of just sit in the middle of the track for a little bit, and then as the revs start to peak, that's when I kind of lift it off, just because if I kept it flat for any longer, it would just hit the rev limiter. But I also found that was a good kind of audio reference to start lifting off without going into the dirt, because there's a lot of runoff over there and it's off camber, so it'll just kind of suck you in and shoot you off to the right. So lifting off, just trying to keep as much speed as possible, and then once I feel that the car is planted and gonna be pointing in the right direction again, I can get back on power. But as you can see, I kind of drifted out as far wide as possible without going onto the dirt. You don't need to really go to the white line, just because it is kind of dangerous. And there's a little bump there as well. This curb you don't really want to hit. You'll kind of just bottom out, and it'll just shoot you to the right. So stay off of that one. Getting as close as possible to it would be good though. But flat out around that corner. This next one, I found it was okay to take a bit of curb. It was faster than avoiding it and having to take a wider line through here. But just being careful as you go over it. You don't want to take too much of it and it shoot you off wide. So yeah, just being careful as you go over it. This next corner as well is probably the trickiest one, because you are coming straight from this corner and the braking zone is on an angle, so you're kind of cornering while braking. So this is where being careful with the brake pedal and the steering wheel is very important. As you can see, my brake application is slow at first because my wheel is still turned, so if I put harder brake percentage faster, I'll lock up. So what I do here is, while my wheel is still turned to the right, I slowly ramp up the brake pressure, almost like you're in a road car driving around the street. And then once the wheel is straight and the car is going in a straight line, I ramp up the brakes to the peak pressure for this corner, and then trail brake like normal. It is kind of easy to lose the rear on this corner as well. So you can see I dropped the brakes fairly quickly, and then just holding that 5-10% brakes right all the way to the apex, and then turning the wheel right before I get back on power, just to extract as much mid-corner rotation as possible. Late apexing this one as well, because you kind of want a good run out of this corner. It's not a very big straight, it's not really a straight, but you want some good speed through here, and so you can set up this next corner better as well. So this next corner is again all about minimum speed, just light on the brakes as you can see, middle of the track for the turn in, and then waiting to apex, waiting, getting back on power, and apexing all the way around here. So again, a late apex to try and set up this corner, and again late apexing this one because there's a straight afterwards. So I found kind of late apexing all of those corners in that midsection helped to set up the next corner and the next corner and the next corner, all leading up to this straight that I'm about to go on. So this corner up to around 40-45% brakes, and then trailing off as I turn in, keeping it middle of the track here and getting back on power. Just being careful though, because you can get on power a bit too early, but it is a fairly long corner. It doesn't seem like it, but you gotta be pretty patient as you go around here. So being careful of this curb as well. Hit that and it will shoot you out wide. And I also found that you can get a bit of wheel spin as well through that corner. So being cautious on the throttle, but not overly cautious, because this car doesn't have a lot of power. Just being careful that you don't have a lot of steering lock when you get back on power. This corner, simple left-hander 90-degree corner, braking at the 50 board, getting the car over to the white line on the right-hand side, braking hard in a straight line up to around 80%, and again trailing off as I turn in. With all these 90-degree corners, for me personally, I find it hard to kind of be patient with the throttle. I always want to throttle a lot earlier than I should be. So just making sure that you are patient with that throttle application and taking the brakes all the way to a certain point. In this case, I didn't need to carry the brakes all the way. Otherwise, I would have hit this curb here. So just getting as close as possible to that apex curbing there, and then just getting back on power. I think it's because the exit seems like it tightens up, but it is a fairly skinny track right here. So yeah, just being careful on exits. You don't throttle too early and understeer wide. With this curb on exit, you can use it all. Doesn't slow you down. You don't get a 1x. It's just free track to be used. Onto the last section of the track here. Up to 5th gear, braking just before the 50 board, all the way to the left-hand side. Again, hitting around 80-85% brakes, down 2 gears, and then as I start to turn in, once again just trail braking, and then holding little brake percentage right before apex, getting back on power, just about clipping that curb. Didn't really touch it, didn't feel anything, so you don't want to hit that one just because it is pretty big. Running all the way wide on exit, not into the dirt, just all the way over this curb here. And then my reference, if I go into cockpit cam, you can see it's just as this red and white curb passes by my front wing. Onto the brakes there, just light brakes, around 15-20%, and then back on power before the apex, just trying to get as best of a run onto the main straight as possible, using all the track on exit. Free track to be used, so use it to your advantage. Free track to be used, so why not use it for some more speed? So yeah, that brings us to the start finish line, and that is the lap guide for week 1 of the ERC Community League in the F4 around Winton. Thanks, and I'll see you on track.